So Gran Turismo just launched their brand new update 1.36, and we're going to be doing our very first race on the new update around Brazil in the Group 3 cars, as this was the race for Daily Race C, and we're going to see if this update has improved anything with the racing here on Gran Turismo. Anyways, we're going to jump right into this race. If you guys enjoy the content, smash the like button and hit the subscribe button down below. Let's jump into it. Alrighty guys, so here we are at Brazil as we are jumping in the Mazda RX-7 Vision Edition. And we are starting off in P4 right behind the Porsche of KCR Niter. And as we make our way now down to turn number 1 here, we try to brake as late as we can, but not too late because we didn't want to make contact and accidentally ram out Niter. And due to being a bit too cautious going through turn 1 and 2, we don't get the best exit coming out of the second corner. And making our way down to turn number 3 here and down the straight, we had to take a defensive line here as we had the Argentina Saavedra right behind us, trying to take a little peek onto the outside, goes for the cut back onto the inside, and luckily we were able to defend the position on the apex, but it's still not over here as he's taking a little quick peek onto the inside here onto these double right-handers, and we had to take a very aggressive defensive move. Very lucky that Saavedra didn't try to lunge it in onto the inside there, so he could have easily taken us out, but we had to take a very aggressive defensive line into that corner just due to the fact that if we would have been overtaken there, we would have ran the risk of getting either pushed out wide onto the dirty marbles, or we could have potentially lost an additional position there, as it's very difficult to basically maintain your position if you get pushed down to that gravel. So anyways, coming out of the final corner, we get a very bad exit, and that was very detrimental for us because we could not do another defensive move. Saavedra was able to just sneak it onto the inside there down this long straight, and as we make our way now to our second lap, he just had the preferred line here as we make our way to turn number 1. So braking right before the 50-meter board, Saavedra gets it onto the inside. He's able to take the position. We give him the spot because we didn't want to just keep it on the outside of Esto Senna, but we unfortunately just get onto the curb, almost lose the back end. Saw that right there. My face just lit up in excitement just trying to catch the car, and luckily we were able to catch the car, but unfortunately we were now starting to get pressured here by the 6th place driver, but we're able to defend our way here. So on our way onto the middle part once again of the track, you can see the Niter up ahead gets a bit loose as he makes contact with the sausage curb and just upset his car. He goes into the marbles, loses the rear end, and once he got back into the track, he just still had dirty tires. We were able to regain that 4th place position, and now we can just set our sights on trying to focus on catching up to the guys up ahead. So on to lap number 3. Nothing really happened on the second lap. We just basically just stayed right behind the guys up ahead, but Saavedra was able to get his way around the Lexus of Wurtzy, the American driver, in 3rd place, and I believe Wurtzy just got into the marbles. As you can see, he's swerving left and right to try to clean off the tires. If you get a couple of tires onto those marbles, it just dirties up the tires, reduces the grip on the corners, and you basically have to drive a few corners to clean up the tires, or you can try swerving left and right like you saw the Lexus up ahead trying to attempt to remove some of the marbles so that he can minimize the time lost here on the race. But anyways, as we make our way into sector number 3, you can see we're starting to catch up to the top 3 drivers, and this was starting to go in my favor just a tad bit, just due to the fact that these guys were fighting aggressively with each other. And at this point I was just focusing on making sure that I was hitting my marks, not overdriving the car, and as long as we could stay with them and stay in the slip and just see them continuously fighting like they are right now, I think we should be all right, and we could potentially start hassling them for one of the top spots here as we make our way now into turn number 4. Wow, so
that was a lunge.
Yeah, we make our way into turn number 4. You can see that I said that there was a bit of a lunge because I was not anticipating that Porsche to just try to go into that 4th corner. And at this point I was having a little bit of a sneaky suspicion that that Porsche was on the soft compound tires because he was driving really quickly around this track, and typically the lap times that he was doing, you don't really see people putting in those lap times with the compound that is mandatory for the race, which is the medium. So I was anticipating he was on the soft compound tires, and if he was on the soft compound tires, he's gonna have to come into the pits And if you come into the pits, you basically lose about a 20-25 seconds on the race total time. So if he is on the softs and we could stay right behind him, as long as we're within the 20-25 seconds, which if he was able to gap us by that much, then we are just terrible. But then we should be all right here, and we should be able to get around him once he comes into the pits, as the mediums again were the mandatory tires for this race. So that's a strategy that I elated to go for. Just start off on the mediums, run those all the way until the end. Yeah, they're going to be cooked towards the end of the race, but I feel like just that was the quickest way to do this race, just due to the fact that you didn't have to sacrifice about 20-25 seconds in the pits. And the fact that this is only a 12-lap race, you're only making up about half a second to a second to all the other drivers on the medium if you start off on the softs. And by the time you reach about lap 8 or 9, the softs are just absolutely destroyed. So the maximum time that someone could possibly make on the cars that are on the medium, especially if you're leading the race, would probably be between around 8 to 10 seconds. So even if you do build a gap that's about 8 to 10 seconds, you still are going to lose about 10 to 12 seconds to the other cars, since you still have to come to the pits and sacrifice all those precious time that you had made up on them on the soft compound tires. So that was the reason why I delayed to use the racing mediums, and it didn't seem to be that difficult compared to the race softs, because the race softs, you use them during time trial to put in your qualifying lap. And like I said, with the mediums, I felt like we were just holding pace. But let's make our way now into lap number 6, going into turn number 1. You can see that we were able to catch up to the Lexus and the Supra up ahead, as the Porsche was starting to build this gap here. And the gap to us and the Porsche up ahead was 2.5 seconds, but we were staying right behind Wurtzy in the Lexus and just staying in the slip, just biding our time here and making sure that we save the tires as much as we could, because once we get closer to the end of the race, that's when these tires really matter. And the guys that are able to save the most amount of tires can make up a tremendous amount of time. I'm talking about half a second to a second to the other guys that are on the same compound that didn't save their tires. So we're just gonna have to be very cautious here these next few laps, and hopefully we keep the tires healthy enough so that once it comes to the end of the race, we're not gonna be on the back end of trying to survive against attacking drivers that save their tires. So anyways, on to lap number 7 here. We get onto the power here coming out of the final corner, and unfortunately lose the back end. And that was going to be a huge mistake for us. As you can see, the slipstream is now starting to escape from us, as there's a huge gap starting to come up ahead of us. But a big surprise hits me right in the face here on this lap, as the Argentinian comes into the pits. I was suspecting him that he was on the softs, the Porsche, as he just had a tremendous amount of pace. But the one thing I was not expecting was for the Lexus of Wurtzy to also be on the soft compound tires. And that just helped us out tremendously, as now we are up into P2. We gained 2 free positions, but it's not over for us quite yet, as we have a crazy fast Nissan GTR on our right hand side fighting for the second place position of Hafidi. And we've seen Hafidi race with us before on the week prior, but as we make our way now into the second sector, we're side by side with him, just trying to defend our position. But unfortunately, the GTR just had such great tire healthiness, and he was able to preserve the tires as much as we were with the Mazda, as the Mazda just absolutely destroyed these tires, especially on the right rear, and just had nothing for Hafidi, as he was able to just get onto our inside or outside and just basically toy with us here for this second place position. And at this point, I'm just trying to think to myself, okay, how can I keep up with Hafidi to utilize him to catch up to that Toyota, because he was going to catch up to that Toyota regardless and get around him. So I wanted to be within the vicinity to get the overtake done on the Toyota as well, because once that Toyota gets overtaken, he's going to go into the not the ideal racing line, and if we can stay with him, then potentially we can get the overtake done. But as we continuously make our way down to this long straight here on Brazil, you can see that the GTR is starting to get a bit impatient. He goes into the outside for the overtake. This is actually a really good move here going to turn number 1, as he's going to have the inside line heading into turn number 2, and he could just squeeze him out here heading through the end of the Estosena. And that is exactly what he does right there. He kept it onto the outside, squeezed it onto the inside, gets around the Toyota, and Hafidi has now found his way into the lead here with just 2 laps to go in the race. And at this point, we're just trying to catch up to these 2 up ahead. And not only that, try to keep an eye on Damien right behind us, as he was closing the gap on us as well, as our tires were starting to fade. So you can see on the bottom right here, our tires are just absolutely dead, just bloodshot red. And I just decided to stop pushing at this point, because I didn't want to accidentally get us involved into a mistake that would cause us to lose this 3rd place position. I think I was kind of content here with finishing in 3rd, as May was still so far up the road, and as well as Hafidi was just long gone here towards the end of this race, as that GTR was just absolutely brilliant with those tires. So here going into the 2nd sector here, we just continued on with our merry way on this lap. And you can see now as we come out of the final corner, Damien was able to really close the gap, as it was about 2 seconds a couple laps ago, but now it has gone down to less than a second. Luckily for us, we had a little saving grace. Damien got a really bad exit, and that should allow us to solidify this 3rd place position. But as we make our way to the start finish line, Hafidi decided to stop for some reason, then May tried to stop. Not sure what that was about. Good race, though. Good race. All right, so after that first race, we decided to ditch the Americas and hop over to our EMEA account, and we jumped back into the Mazda RX-7, as I just felt really comfortable with this car. But we got our 3, 2, 1, and away we go, as we have the Polish driver in the McLaren, and as well as a Brit right ahead of us in the McLaren as well. So a little bit different of cars here on this race, and that's actually what I wanted to talk about, is that this update, I feel like, just really close the gap with the BOP with a lot of these Group 3 cars. Not quite sure how it is with the Group 4 cars. I know last week it was absolutely brilliant with the Group 4 cars, but the Group 3 did need a little bit of working on. And I felt like with, I don't know if it was with this update they made any BOP changes. I think they did, just something that they didn't tell us. But I felt like the Group 3 cars were just a lot more diverse on this racetrack. And it might just be the kudos to Brazil just being a brilliant racetrack and just factoring to being just accommodable to all these different cars. But it just seemed like you can use about 8 to 10 different cars and you can still be competitive on this race. So I don't know, I'm not quite sure if it was just the setup, the way that the lobbies were made with using the medium compound tires, or if it's just the track, or if they actually did make a BOP change. But it just was really brilliant, this race with these Group 3 cars. So I'm really enjoying where Gran Turismo is going with these Group 3 cars, and hopefully we could have a little bit more of that. But anyways, let's make our way into turn number 1. Unfortunately, the Polish driver of Chevalier just goes a bit wide, tries to get back onto the track, and absolutely clips us on the right rear. We almost lost a little bit of our pace there, because we almost got turned, but luckily we were able to survive that. We didn't get killed, and we lived to fight for another day. And now we're just focusing on trying to catch up to Judicious, as you can see that the gap was about 1.5 seconds as we make our way down into lap number 3. So this race was a little interesting here, because it was just a battle between us and Judicious, as we were just trying to run him down the entire race. And you're gonna see here that we were just absolutely pushing. Like, I was trying to stay as calm as possible, but also be as quick as possible. And it's just a very difficult task to do, especially when you're chasing down someone that is about a second ahead of you. You guys are almost exactly the same pace, but you know you're just a tenth quicker, just a tad bit little or a tad bit over, depending on how good your laps are. So just having to be pinpoint perfect on this race in order to catch up Judicious is going to be a very hard challenge to get through here around Brazil. But if you guys have noticed, also the volume was a bit I guess, distorted, the best way you can explain it. Not quite sure exactly what happened with the Elgato capture card, but when it recorded this race, it just made a weird crackling noise. So instead of you guys listening to the engine, I decided to put a little bit of background music to kind of eliminate, you know, the awkwardness of just hearing my voice in your ear. But you're still gonna be able to see this race. Just gonna only have a little bit of music in the background. But anyways, midway through the race, lap number 6, you can see that the gap was closing to the McLaren up ahead, but unfortunately we just had a couple of bad laps. And when I say bad laps, I'm just talking about just being a tenth slower than the McLaren up ahead, and due to it being a tenth slower, it just added up, and he was able to increase the gap from us. But I was starting to notice that he was struggling a bit through some parts of the racetrack. Where we were really struggling at was on this third sector. This third sector was really bad for me, depending on what car I was using, whether it was the GTR, the McLaren, or the Mazda, even the Toyota. I just could not get this third sector down. And around Brazil, that was always my weak spot, this third sector, as for some reason I just don't know how to take that final corner, as well as some of the other corners on sector 3. It's just, it always tricked me, and I feel like that's one spot where I really need to practice on this racetrack. It's definitely that third sector. But luckily for us, you can see now we're on lap number 9, which is 3 laps to go here. A couple of guys behind us come into the pits as they accidentally start off on the soft compound tires and couldn't make those last entire way due to the mediums being mandatory. But we were now slowly but surely catching up to Judicious, and I was starting to get a lot more confident in my driving. But that's where you have to be very careful. Once you start getting really confident in your driving, you're seeing that you're catching up to the driver up ahead, it just opens the door to a accidental mistake that can be done, especially because you get a little bit of that confidence. You start feeling better about yourself. You start doing different things, brake later, turn in tighter, get on the throttle earlier, and sometimes that could just lead to overconfidence and making slight mistakes that causes you to lose time. So that was the one thing I was really focusing on to try to avoid, and it seemed to have been working. As we can see, we were still catching up to him slowly but surely, just gaining a tenth at a time every single corner, or I'm sorry, every single sector. But you can see there were still some spots where I was just struggling on, especially on that final corner. As you can see, the McLaren was able to just get a little bit of a gap, but luckily we were getting assistance from the slipstream and just reeling him back in. So 3 laps to go here now in this race, and the tires were feeling fine. I was okay with the tires. I was just mainly focusing on just hitting my marks, not being too overconfident, not overdriving the car. And I was really focusing on, as well as my throttle, because it's very easy to just accidentally get onto the throttle too aggressively with this car, especially on this racetrack, and burning up those rears, and as well as losing the back end. So that was one thing that was just really focusing on, just making sure that I wasn't going to do that here, as we now have Judicious in our grasp here. But as we make our way now onto lap number 11, things were still looking promising, but not too promising, as the laps are starting to wind down here, and we had to basically go, and that led to my detriment, which was right there. You can see that we accidentally just got on the power a bit too aggressively coming out of Esto Senna, and that just killed my momentum. You can see right here that I'm just a little bit frustrated with myself. I was trying to just push too much there, since I knew that I was almost within half a second of him, and that's exactly what I wanted to avoid. As we also make another mistake there, all get into the grass, and that was not what we needed here, especially with just 2 laps to go. So that's one thing I really have to work on, is my patience when catching up to a driver, especially when I know that I'm quicker than him. Just because I tend to do these types of things where I just overdrive the car, especially when I get too close to him. I get too tunnel vision and too excited about trying to do the next step, which is the overtake, that I don't think about actually getting to a position where I can make the overtake, and it causes me to make some stupid mistakes like I just did right there. And of course, hopefully the more I start playing again on Gran Turismo, the more I start getting used to these types of situations, and I can start calming myself down and get myself positioned for a good overtake, especially when I'm catching up to the car up ahead at such a slow pace like I was on this race. But anyways, we make our way now into the final lap, and this was going to be a very crucial lap here because I was still trying to put the pressure on Judicious up ahead, but he was really showing his nerves of steel here. He was not folding. He was really well off on this race, and he was not making any mistakes like we were. But I was still trying to push him here, trying to see if we can close the gap, see if we can force him into a mistake like we did the race prior to some of the guys. But as we make our way now into the final sector, it just didn't seem like we were going to be able to do it, as the time was just starting to tick away. And as we make our way down to the straight, it's going to be here a P2, as we're not going to be able to catch up to that McLaren. That was good. That was good. I was trying so hard to keep with him. Maybe with another 2 laps, probably. I don't know. That was a really good race. GG to Judicious. He had that dog in him. Wow. I don't know if there's anything I could do more on that. I was really pushing. I think I was putting in some really quick lap times and consistent ones, and I just could not close the gap enough. I feel like towards the end though, I started really getting a good hang of the car. So maybe if I would have started off as strong as I did at the ending, maybe we could have won.